pastors at my church.
Pastor, there you
And
go.
to my right here, I have another one of the pastors at my church, Pastor Jason. But he's actually the FUSA senior because his son is training. His son started training a week ago. So I'm very blessed to have them here with me this morning. Let's just go ahead. We can open up our Bibles here to Numbers chapter 13. And to give a little bit of context, the Jews were in Egypt. They were slaves in Egypt. And then God brought about the plagues, and he brought the Jews out of Egypt. And he told the Jews that he was going to bring them into a promised land. So this is the period in between Egypt and the promised land where the Jews are in the wilderness. And where we are in chapter 13, we'll start at verse 25. The Jews are right next to the promised land. And God tells Moses to send some spies into the promised land to see the promised land and bring back a report. And we'll start at verse 25. I'll just go ahead and read here. At the end of the 40 days, they returned from spying out the land, and they came to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him, "We came to a land which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites dwell in the hill country, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea along the Jordan." But Caleb, who was one of the spies, quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are able to overcome it." Then the man who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are." So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone to spy out is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people that we saw in the land are of great height. And they saw, and there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from Nephilim. And we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them." And this is chapter 14 is where I want to focus a little bit today. Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, "Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?" And they said to one another, "Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt." As I was reading this and coming up and thinking about this, I found myself lately, actually it's a little bit more than lately, we could probably say, we had like a retreat a couple days ago, and we said like 18 months. I could even say maybe even a little longer than that. But I find myself lately in that place where I don't feel like I'm in Egypt anymore, but I wouldn't say that I'm in a promised land. I find myself in that wilderness. And lately, especially, over the last couple of months in myself, right, I have been feeling like there's been a big pull in me to try and return to some of my old ways, to try and return to some of my old ways of thinking, old habits, things that really return to Egypt in my heart. And I'm thinking along the lines of, we could say like my spiritual walk, but I think we could easily say, we can't compartmentalize. It could be all areas of your life. One area where you feel like you're going backwards, it's going to bleed out into every other area of your life. You're going to end up going back to Egypt, right? So I feel like lately I have been in a place where, whether we could say, it's the enemy pulling me back, it's my flesh, it's things of this world pulling me back, I feel a big pull to go back. And a lot of times when I'm in that wilderness, and I feel this pull, I have a very strong tendency to, how do I put this? I have a very strong tendency to say, you know what, this is wrong, like I recognize it, but I'm gonna try harder at what I'm doing to get out of that season. So I'm gonna try to read the Bible more, or pray more, or double down on helping people more, right? And at the end of that little period where I try and double down on just trying harder and doing more, really performing more, I always find myself overwhelmed, and at the end of it, physically, emotionally, and spiritually totally checked out. And at that point, that's when I make up excuses to go back to Egypt and say that this path of moving forward with the Lord is not really worth it. It's not really worth my energy, my time. I could go focus on something else, like anything else that I think will make me happy in the end. And this struggle has been happening, actually probably, Tony could probably tell you more times that it's happening than I could tell you, because he tends to call me out on it when it happens. But this process has happened quite a few times over the last couple of years. And you get better, and then you fall back into the same cycle. And to be honest, it's pretty difficult to keep trying and feel like you're almost hitting the post a little bit. But I was sitting in Alyssa's office the other day, like literally 3 days ago, and this book popped out to me. It's by Henry Nouwen, and I guess Pastor David knows who he is. I don't even know who this guy is. Apparently he's a Catholic priest who has some pretty good writings. But this is literally a book of some of his journalings in a difficult season in his life. And I just opened up the book and I started reading. I wanted to read this to you guys because it's really helped me a little bit. It's called Trust the Inner Voice. He uses some words like converted, but I think of it as like the sanctification that we talk about, being formed into the image of Christ. But we'll just go from there. It says, do you really want to be converted? Are you willing to be transformed? Or do you keep clutching your old ways of life with one hand, while with the other, you beg people to help you change? Conversion is certainly not something that you can bring about yourself. It's not a question of willpower. You have to trust the inner voice that shows the way. You know that inner voice. You turn to it often. But after you have heard with clarity what you are asked to do, you start raising questions, fabricating objections, and seeking everyone else's opinion. Thus you become entangled in countless, often contradictory thoughts, feelings, and ideas, and lose touch with the God in you. And you end up dependent on all the people you have gathered around you. Only by attending constantly to the inner voice can you be converted to a new life of freedom and joy. And this really spoke to me because I feel like it has perfectly described exactly where I'm at, where I feel like I'm grabbing, trying to move forward, but at the same time holding on to the past. And it made me think about, why am I still trying to hold on to the past? What makes me want to go backwards? And I realized that going back to Egypt, or going backwards in, your walk, whatever it might be, is really an illusion of control in your life. You might not like the place that you were at before. You might not like where you were situated, your life, your circumstances. But at least when I'm there, I know exactly what I'm going to get. So because I know what I'm going to get, I have this illusion that I can kind of control the outcome. You won't. I'll be honest, you won't. But you have this illusion that you can control the outcome. It's to move forward is really the difficult part, because it requires you to step into the unknown. It requires you to take a step and say, you know what? I don't have this. I cannot try and control my path forward. It's only by me trusting, we said the inner voice here, but it's only by me trusting the Father, by me trusting Jesus and what Jesus says, that I can start moving forward. And all these times that I find myself, I said I tried to fight, double down by my willpower, by my might. It's the same thing. In the process of the wilderness where I feel like I have been for some time, I am still trying to control where I'm at. I feel like, I'm not alone in this. So that's why I wanted to say this today. But we have to come to a place where we are giving ourselves daily, continually to the Father, to Jesus, in order to move forward. It hit me that actually the promised land, really sometimes me focusing on the promised land can actually be a hindrance to me actually getting to the promised land. That me focusing on what the outcome is, a lot of times, I don't know about you guys, but it gives me a little bit of anxiety, because I'm thinking, man, to be the person that God calls you to be there, I have no idea how to get there. And it freaks me out a little bit. It's funny, I talked with Tony, and Tony's like, this excites me. I was like, it doesn't really excite me that much, actually. I'm kind of scared. But you gotta let go of that fear. We have to come to a place where we're letting go of this idea, this sense that I can kind of control my life around me, so that I can step into what God is calling us to do. Because as long as I'm controlling or thinking that I'm controlling what I'm going to, I can never move forward. I can never move forward with the Lord. I always have to let go in order that I can move forward, in order that I can dive deeper with the Father, in order that I can learn His voice, in order that I can learn the things that He's calling me to do. If you keep reading here in Numbers, the Jews really mess up here. This is only and if I'm wrong, correct me, but this is only 2 years after they left Egypt. If you guys know, I'm sure most of you know, the Jews were in the desert, the wilderness, for 40 years. They mess up here and they spend another 38 years in the wilderness. The whole generation has to die off for the new generation to come into the promised land. And I read here in Deuteronomy, if we could turn to Deuteronomy here, chapter 8, verse 2. This is right before, 38 years later, this is right before they're right about to enter into the promised land, actually enter in. And verse 2 says, is from the Lord. And you shall remember the way that the Lord your God has led you in the 40 years in the wilderness, that He might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep His commandments or not. And what's beautiful about that to me is, I'm not in the wilderness because, I might have put myself here, I'll be honest, but I'm not in the wilderness because God's trying to punish me or anything like that. I'm here in this wilderness because it's an opportunity not only to draw close with the Father, but to really discover who I am. Discover my identity in Christ. So it's difficult, it's uncomfortable, it's hard to navigate, but I'm learning more about who I actually am to the Father. I'm losing some of the old hurts, some of the old traumas that I still hold on to this day. And I'm learning how to step into that promised land, which is really a place with the Father, in total communion with the Father. And it's beautiful to me. It's really beautiful to me. It has given, thinking about it like this has really encouraged me to press forward a little bit more and to not be so apprehensive in the place that I am. I wasn't really sure exactly how, I guess my lecture's a little short today, but I wasn't really sure exactly how to finish. And I had an idea and stuff, and then we came in this morning and we started singing. And David actually ended up singing exactly the way that I think is important for us to really focus on, was the song Build My Life. I need the lyrics here. But we literally said this out loud. When we think about this wilderness, this Egypt, the wilderness, the promised land, we said this like, I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I think that bridge is so beautiful, because it's only by really coming to a place where we really build our life upon God's love, upon Jesus' love. Not that we're going to get out of the promised land, like that's the focus, but that's where we're really going to dive deeper into the Father. It's not about the result of the promised land. That's the thing that I really hope you guys hear. It's not about the result of the promised land. It's about the process to get to there. It's about how much am I changing from within, but really how much am I diving deeper and growing in deeper and more intimacy with the Father to get there. Because if you get there, that promised land, without actually diving in deep with the Father, you miss the whole point. You miss the whole point. Whatever that promised land might be for you. But the promised land, in what I'm hearing is, it's intimacy with the Father. It's total communion with the Father. It's total communion with the Father. If you actually go back to Numbers real quick, you go back to Numbers real quick. In chapter 12, this is really beautiful here. I'll skim through, but Miriam and Aaron, who are Moses' siblings, they actually spoke out against Moses because he wasn't married to a Jewish woman and all this stuff. But God brings all three of them out, and he talks with all three of them. And he says, "Come out, you three, to the tent of meeting." And the three of them came out. And the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud, and he stood at the entrance of the tent, and he called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forward. And he said to them, "Hear my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak to him mouth to mouth, clearly and not in riddles. And he beholds the form of the Lord." I don't know about you guys, but that sounds pretty cool to me. Like, that sounds exciting to me. Now, you have to go back and read and see all the stuff that Moses had to go through to be with the Father in that level of intimacy. But to have a conversation with the Father where you're not speaking mouth to mouth, no riddles, you don't have to decipher anything like that, that's a level of intimacy that I want to dive deeper into. And I believe that, the wilderness is great, but ultimately I think that we just need to continue to persevere after the Father. I think we need to continue to dive deeper into the Father and really learning to know him, and not just know him on Sundays, but really know him in every area of our life. So that's my encouragement to you guys, is to really just persevere with the Father. Whatever that looks like. It might be you might have to feel like I need to get into the Word more. It might be something as simple as I need to get into community more with people that are going to help guide me through this. But whatever that looks like for you, I really want to just encourage you guys to just dive deep with the Father this morning. Not worry so much about your circumstances around you or where you feel like you might be at, and just turn yourself back to the Father. Because that's the true reward that we have in this lifetime and eternity. That's the true reward. So, I told Tony earlier this week, I don't really know how to land this plane. And I still don't really know. I hope I landed it. Actually, I was going to ask, I don't know, if anybody wants to speak, you guys are more than welcome to speak. If anybody wants to speak, you guys are more than welcome to speak. But if you guys, if David, you're willing, or Pastor David, you're willing, if after we speak and everything like that, I'd love to do the song Build My Life one more time. Just as a declaration to say, Father, we're returning to you this morning. Father, we are coming to really dive deep with you again in our lives. So if anybody wants to speak, you're more than welcome to. The floor is yours.